Hey y'all, what's up? On this episode of Tom Talks, we are going to be talking with Darrell Scogins, the owner of DoubleRock Homes. And I guess this is very cool for me. I love talking with builders. And you are one of my favorite builders.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. I will say a lot of times, I use the same, for the most part, same inspectors do most of our stuff. And they've always spoke very highly of everything that you do, which is hard to accomplish as a builder, right? Because you're not the one that's looking at every house, right?
Right.
But I think that speaks a lot to who you hire and your values and everything else. But I guess for folks that don't know you, will you just tell your story? How'd you get into building? All
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually a second generation builder. My father, he did really all types of construction growing up. And literally back then when I was probably 7, 8 years old, I used to go to the job sites with my father during the summer and literally hands-on. We framed houses, we poured concrete, we did electrical work, we did plumbing work. So a lot of hands-on. And I did that every summer really all the way through college.
Okay.
And so I had it in my blood. I always loved building. I loved the industry. But with my degree, I went in and I started developing software. So for the first 7 years of my career, I worked for American Airlines, the technology division. It's called Sabre.
Uh-huh.
And we had a lot of proprietary software that we wrote. We went around to the transportation industry around the world and sold it. So I think in 7 years, I worked in 30 countries, 44 states, and I think I racked up 2.7 million miles. So that's the first part of my career. And then after going back, I got tired of all the traveling. I went back to SMU grad school, earned my MBA, and then started working for Fidelity Investments and spent about 20 years in Fidelity Investments. Kind of worked on the whole Wall Street thing. So
When you went back to school, did you know that's what you wanted to do?
I loved business, and what I thought I was really good in the technology side, but I thought where the gap was you had some really strong business people and you had some really strong technical people, but that middle that could bridge the two, I thought there were gaps there, and I thought that could be my niche. So. And that's where I played for about 20 years. I had a great time, great career. Fidelity's a great company, but my passion was always real estate. Even during my 20-year career, 27-year career in the professional world, I always invested in real estate. We built houses. My father still had his company, and I always loved it. And then, I knew I wanted to eventually do land development at a minimum, and I loved building houses too. And then I got to a point and I'm like, okay, my son graduated high school. We had talked about opening a company, and we pulled the trigger and opened the company about 9 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And so what was your goal when you started the company?
Man, that's a great question. The thing about working on, even Wall Street or, doing, hardcore project management is, you pushed a lot of paper and you did a lot of process improvement and things. But at the end of the day, there wasn't something tangible there. And I think the thing that attracted me to this industry, and particularly what I do now, is I do want a legacy, right? I wanted to build a legacy for my family. I wanted to go out and I really wanted to see if I could start up a company from scratch and scale it and grow it. It was a personal goal. And then on top of that, I wanted to leave something behind. I wanted to be able to go to that neighborhood 30 years down the road and say, we did that.
Yeah.
We did that. And all these houses in here, we built that. And so that was what sort of intrigued me about it. And we're a family business, and most of the people that work for us are either family or friends. Of course, doesn't mean we're only friends and family, but
Sure.
It's fun. We have fun every single day we go to work. It's a good time, and that's kind of what I was looking for. It doesn't feel like a work. It doesn't feel like a job. I love going to work every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you started, what was in your mind, did you ever think, hey, the odds of this being successful is
I don't want to sound
100%?
arrogant at all, because I'm not an arrogant person.
Yeah.
I had zero fear, zero doubt.
Okay.
I went in and I knew just through my experience with just hard work, determination, and at that point we had enough financial capital to put into the company that yeah, I had goals of, hey, I want sales to be this much, revenue to be this much, et cetera. But I never had a fear of failure. I knew it was going to be a little bit tough in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I really thought in my heart we were going to do well.
That's awesome. So you're based out of Godly. You build a lot in Godly and also kind of around that area, right? Granbury, Fort Worth a little bit.
Yeah, Weatherford, we do a lot in Weatherford. We've done Fort Worth, Burleson, Joshua, Cleburne,
Okay.
Godly, and we've even done some in like Decatur up north. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah.
How far will you guys go to build a house?
We'll do about a 45-mile radius of Godly. And, I don't really want to be on the other side of Dallas. It's just such a long haul for all the subcontractors, and it's a completely different animal over there, if you will. But, yeah, about a 45-minute drive.
Okay. So one of the things that I really like about what you guys do is I feel like I walk into your houses and number one, it's done really nice. One of the things that you guys did long before everybody else, I feel like, anyway, it may not be true, but it seemed like, because I've sold a lot of new homes, walk into a lot of new homes, but you guys foam insulated. I mean, you started this as far back as I can remember. Yeah. And so like these, when you talk about builders cutting corners and whatnot, I feel like that's not something you guys ever do. Do you find that it's harder to compete on price and everything else when you're doing all of these finishes? Like, do you find that customers really appreciate it? Do they understand what they're getting? Or is it like, hey, why is this priced this way? Or
Sure. It's a great question. It's a tough question because, I'll give you I'll start with an example, then I'll get into the answer. When we did our first subdivision in Godly, it was Stone Valley Park, beautiful, 1 acre lots. There were 46 lots, and we gated it. And people said, "You're absolutely crazy building a gated community in Godly. Nobody's going to buy that. They don't want to pay for that. It's too high end, and you're not going to be able to sell houses."
Sure.
And oh, by the way, this is almost 9 years ago, and at the time, houses in Godly were probably selling for $120 a square foot. And we were coming in selling at $160 to $180 a square foot. And people were like, "You're absolutely out of your mind. You're going to fail." And, my thinking all along was, well, I'm not trying to build the same product. I don't want to build what everybody else is building. I wanted innovative design. I wanted high quality, because there's always people out there that, if you look at the cars, I mean, you can go get a really, really cheap, $15,000 low end car, or you can go get, a Mercedes or a BMW, and you can get the higher end. But I think there are people that appreciate value.
Yeah.
And there are people that want value. And that's really the clients that we're going after. We're not trying to be all things to all people. We don't suffer any delusions. We know who we are. We're not going to be the cheapest guy in town. But if you walk our houses and you see the quality, we never do the same thing twice ever.
Yeah.
It's almost a sin in our in our organization. Like, we just don't do the same things over and over. We want every single house to be unique, including the interior, exterior, and that's what our designers, they're maniacal about trying to always innovate and be different. So, we know kind of who we are. We're not out building 1,000 houses a year. We're building, between 80 to 100 houses a year. I'm limited it to about 25 custom homes a year is about, where I want to be. Again, not trying to go out there and crush it with volume necessarily.
Yeah.
We just want to try to find the right people that are looking for that high quality.
Yeah, and I feel like even though you build that high end product, you're not the most expensive one out there. To me, it's a good value.
Yeah, I think so. That's a great point too, because I do believe that what I think is one of the biggest things that's wrong in this industry is the whole comping, right, and appraisals, because it almost forces you to dumb down your house. And I hate to use that word, but it's like, hey, one neighborhood over, they're selling for $140 a square foot, and maybe our house is $160 a square foot. It's not huge incremental difference, but there is a difference. But a lot of times we'll get appraisals back, and they'll do the law of averages and dumb it down, and they'll take these houses that aren't even anywhere similar to ours, and then they bring our price point down. So, we haven't had a tremendous amount of issues with appraisals. I would say we're probably up to 400 or 500 houses we built, in the last 7 or 8 years, and I would say that maybe 10 of those we've had a bad appraisal.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, you're just going to get a bad appraiser.
Yeah, it's there's some things in this industry that don't make sense to me. That's one of
Yeah.
them. It's like, if somebody's willing to pay it, but I get it. The bank's trying to protect
Sure.
themselves, but
Sure.
at the same time, like I've seen some really bad ones.
Yeah, appraisers don't even value the house anymore. It's just formulas, and
Yeah.
I don't even know. Sometimes it's like, did you really walk the house and see everything inside and see the quality? But again, they're also. I mean, I'm not knocking appraisers. They have a tough job, and they have certain guidelines and things they have to stick to. But it is one of those things in the industry to where I'm more like you. I think it's supply and demand, and I think at some point, if somebody sees the value in that house, then and they're willing to pay for it, and everybody thinks it's a fair price, then you shake hands and you get the deal done.
Yeah, and that's that's the other thing too, is like I was in this industry for a long time before I started. Like I didn't know the difference between a quartz and granite. I couldn't tell you by looking at it. I can now.
Right.
But when I started, I mean, it was years before. Like I started to realize the value in things and how much nicer things were, and that comes from not only walking new builds, but seeing homes that were built 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. Then you start to kind of put this picture together. But for the average person, even for the newer agent, they're not, a lot of people aren't going to see that, or the newer appraiser, right?
Sure.
So I get that. Okay. And so what is your vision for DoubleRock now that you're 9 years into this thing and it seems to be humming along?
Sure. One of the things, we started out primarily as a custom builder, and we were targeting that sort of, and this again is, 9 years ago, we were targeting that sort of 400 to 600 range, because that's sort of the product, the foam insulation, the train HVACs, just the high-end finish outs. And, that's kind of the area that we had to play in. And we knew we were going to have to be in sort of the custom end of it. But we always had a goal to scale and grow. And the only way you can do that is you do have to build a different product, right? And what we came up with is, I call it a premium production line of homes.
Okay.
And so what we try to do is we try to take the same nice quality, the finish outs, the design that we would put in, even our $1 million homes that we're building, and bring that to a product that you could sell between $275 to $350, right? Especially when we first started it. And so I because again, I think if you could bring that value to that, that price point, it's your quality is so much better than the big box guys, right? And so that was kind of a big play in a direction that we headed, because we thought, okay, that's a way for us to scale. I never want to build a product that doesn't meet our standards. At the end of the day, we provide support for our homes. If somebody, I always tell people, we do not build a perfect house. We don't. There's not one single builder in the world. There is no such thing, right? But there are people that sometimes they believe there are perfect houses, but there's no such thing, right? But I think what we try to do is try to build a really, really good, high quality product. And if there is a mistake or something happened, that's what we have service for, and we're going to stand behind it, and we're going to do a good job. So, my vision for DoubleRock, I guess, is a couple things. We're going to continue with a premium production model, because we do land development as well. Actually, as a business model, we do three things. We do land development, we build homes, and we also build and accumulate rental properties. And that's kind of been our model from day one. We're going to continue with that model. I would love to see us go from 100 houses a year to maybe 250, 300 houses. Is kind of where I would see us over the next maybe 5 years. Okay.
So a couple of things. Number one, if you're wanting to see the difference, like Darrell's talking about in that like $300,000 range, we've got a video out on Godly where we go to these different neighborhoods, and we look at, you can see the difference at like Godly Ranch, where you've got your production builders, and then Hadley Farms, where it's all of your builds. We go through two there, and just like it's just super apparent even in that, the stark difference, because we toured spec homes, right? And that's another big thing. Like typically when you go in and you walk through a model and it looks amazing, right? All the bells and whistles are out, right. It's been staged, and then you walk through a spec home and you're like, wow, this is really basic. But it doesn't feel that way on your homes. So it's like you guys put in accent walls, you do all kinds of different things. So I guess how, as far as a builder goes, that's got to be a little bit more difficult, right? Because, like you said, no two houses are really the same, and so that means the people on your team are having to execute different things than they do normally. What kind of challenges has that brought about?
There's definitely challenges, in trying to continue to create uniqueness in every home because, again, I mean, the big box guys, I mean, they're fantastic. They have great business models, great people, but they have a formula, right? And it's almost like you get the red house, the green house, and the yellow house, and everything's the same inside.
Yeah.
And that's how they scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, there's variation. I'm probably oversimplifying it, but within our house, we do have to go in, and everything takes more time up front to do all of the planning and the design. And that's, and even during the build, I give my superintendents a lot of leeway. I'm like, hey, listen, you get $2,500 a house to do any sort of upgrade you want in that house. So as you're going through that house, whatever you're feeling,
this would be a great idea.
Yeah, this would be a great idea.
Cool.
Oh man, look at that wall over there. If we added some extra trim to this wall, or if we had an accent point, things like that. So we give our superintendents leeway to make those changes. I actually encourage it because I want a lot of different thinking, a lot of different ideas. I challenge my guys to go out, always be online looking for new ideas, go to new neighborhoods, and being creative. And then the same thing with our designers. I give them a lot of leeway, and it's like, listen, we have to continue to innovate. So I think it just starts with the mindset within our company. We give the ability to our employees to execute on it. And I would say it probably adds another 2 or 3 weeks to the build, to be honest with you, just in terms of build times, because it's more planning up front. And then, our designers not only plan up front, but they're walking the houses all the time.
How many designers do you guys have? I know your wife is a designer.
Kelly,
right?
she's awesome. Yeah. It's God-given talent. It's crazy because she didn't go to formal training or anything, but, for forever, she's just been super talented and she loves it. She has a passion for it. And, I'll put her up against any designer I've ever seen. I think she's amazing. And she loves it, so she's always out looking. I always tease her. I would say, on any given week, she's probably, 20 hours of just doing research nonstop. Oh, yeah. She'll be at home just looking at pictures, thumbing through. She's sitting on the couch watching TV, but she's just always looking. But I think that's a big part of it. So.
Yeah. Well, it is, because we flip homes, and I'm always looking at this, and I'm like, this is so cool. Why doesn't anybody do this? And then I walk through your houses, I'm like, oh, I guess somebody is doing it. One of the things, I guess a couple of things, we've got a video out of your old, I say old, it's not that old, but the model home that you built and ended up selling. But you have these giant doors that go to your patio, which are amazing. There's so much accent lighting. You've got a floating bench under your fireplace with lighting underneath that, in the shower and everything else. Why do you think more builders aren't pushing the envelope on that?
I think first of all, it takes a lot more time, right? It takes a lot more planning. Some of the stuff it can get expensive. And then on top of that is you have to be really on the job site almost daily. And I think that's what's different between our company and some of the other companies. My superintendents, they're out at our houses every single day. And they're meeting with the subcontractors, and we're going over things. And when there are changes like that, you sometimes it's new, right? And you have to kind of figure out, well, what is the best way to do this? And you can look at a picture, you can get ideas and things, but to be able to go and execute on it, it just takes time. And I think that's, again, you have to make the commitment to spend the time out there working with your subcontractors, because a lot of times they've never done it before. They're super talented and they can do anything, but they've never done it. So I think it takes a collaboration from your team and a real commitment. And I think the reason a lot of builders don't do that is they kind of want the simple way out, right? You go out there, you line your subs up, you go out there for a few days, you check on it, and it's just a lot easier. There's less risk. It doesn't cost as much money. And I think a lot of builders are in it just for the money. Mm-hmm. We're not. I mean, yeah, you got to make money to have a sustainable business and to do well. But man, I'm proud of what we build, and I want to build high quality stuff. I want to build cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if you're not going to do a really good job and you don't really love what you do, then don't do it.
Right.
Go do something else. And I think that's the difference.
Makes sense. I like it. Now, going back to what you mentioned before, your 3 different businesses, really, development. So, how does that work? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you just buy a piece of land and you chop it up and put houses on it. That's oversimplification. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and the challenges?
Sure. Land development is it can be very tricky, and it's very, very complex. So there's sort of I'm going to oversimplify, but there's really sort of 2 kinds of development that we're doing. One is inside of a city limits, right? Completely different animal, much smaller lots, much more sophisticated rules that you have to work around. There's ordinances and guidelines, and each city is a little different. So whichever city you're working in, you're going to have to go understand their development process. They have certain requirements. So first of all, you got to start there. And these requirements are usually like 100 pages long. So you're reading through and here's sort of the requirements. But even if you take a step back, first of all, it's like, you look at the land, it's like, is it in a good location? What kind of water, drainage and, what kind of water studies are you going to have to do? Is it in a floodplain? What is the terrain? Does it have trees? Does it not have trees? And then you have to have a plan, like what am I going to do with that land? Like, how am I going to divide it up? Am I looking for 7,000 square foot lots? I'm looking for half-acre lots and that sort of thing. So a lot of that just goes into the planning. And then it's like, access points. Where do I want people to enter? Where do I want people to leave the neighborhood? And then you get into things, well, how far is the offsite? How far is water? Do I have to bring water 3 miles away? Is it right in front of the property? Electrical and all the utilities and things like that. So you really have to kind of go through, and there's a lot of legwork that you have to do just to figure out, can I even develop this land?
Right. So
first of all,
with the water, even if there's a water pipe there, is it big enough to support
Correct.
The amount of houses?
Great
right?
point. That's so there's how many houses are you going to have in there, and even ingresses and egresses. There's only a certain amount that can leave on the ingresses and egresses.
And this is how you ended up owning an RV park, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You would tell that story.
Yeah. Exactly. My very first development, it was a small development in Weatherford, and we had went to the city, and everything was preliminary approved, and we were good, and we bought this land, and we were going to start developing it. And about the time, it took us about 6 months from the time we bought the land to where we were ready to develop, because we had to do all the engineering and getting all the lots and everything ready. That's another 6 month to a year project. Well, anyway, when we went to the city to try to get approval, they're like, oh, well, you know what? I know we preliminary approved it, but some things have changed. We have some new ordinances, and now you need another ingress and egress. And we're like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because we only have one.
Yeah.
Right? And so what we ended up doing was we got creative. We didn't give up. And there was a piece of property to the south of, actually to the west of our property. And it was the first piece of property outside the city limits. And it just happened to be an RV park. And so we ended up calling on the RV park and asked them if they would sell us an easement. And it was kind of interesting because we started out, and the gentleman, he was a nice guy, and we ended up agreeing that, yeah, I'll sell you an easement. And he's like, I tell you what, I'll sell it to you for like $20,000, because all we needed was an ingress and egress for like fire safety.
Yeah.
And they already had a gravel road and everything there, so it was like $20,000.
Was $20,000 a good deal?
Oh yeah, it was
Okay.
a fair deal. It was a fair deal. And because the guy is just going to pocket this. There was no worker. We were going to do everything else, right? And then about we're getting close to it's like, okay, well, let's sign the easement. Then he came back. Oh, you know what? It's going to be like $30,000. And then a couple of weeks later, it went to $50,000. And so it just kept climbing, and we're like, oh boy. And about that time, my business partner and I, we said, hey, why don't you just sell us the RV park? Because at the time, this guy had like 6 around the U.S., and he was always talking about he really didn't enjoy visiting here. It was too hot for him, and this and that. He's from California.
Yeah.
And so it took us about 9 months, but we just ended up acquiring it through him.
So that's crazy. And so something that you were hoping to have developed in 6 months ended up taking 1.5 years? Or?
About 3 years.
3 years. Wow.
2.5 to 3 years.
So that's the tricky part, because a lot of people look at developing land and then they're like, oh yeah, we can build houses on it. Well, you don't know what the market's going to be like by the time you get done, right?
In the city limits of any city, you're talking at least 2 years.
Wow.
It's going to take you a year to get all of your preliminary platting and engineering, all your utilities and everything worked out. And the engineering is hardcore. I mean, you're doing everything from the streets. You're doing storm drainage. You're doing water, electrical, all of the sort of infrastructure, and you have to do again, water studies, drainage studies, all kinds.
I was going to
things.
ask you about that. So with the drainage studies, somebody comes in and they watch water run off the land, right? They're like, hey, this is where it goes. What happens with that? Like, do you have, obviously, if you're in the city, there's probably a sewer system that you're trying to get it to. But if you're outside of city limits, or if you're out there where it's a bunch of undeveloped land, how does that work?
Typically what they do is it's pretty sophisticated in a sense of they can analyze what the water runoff is today current without you having any additional lots. So as you go in and develop, you have to maintain that same flow rate. So in essence, if you go in and let's say you put 100 houses in, well, your sheet flow is going to be very different, right?
What is sheet flow?
Sheet flow is like if you didn't have anything there, it would hit, and let's say it goes downhill, right?
Okay.
It's raining, it hits that, and it just flows over, and eventually it flows to another property or drainage or something,
Yeah,
right?
or a
Today,
pond or
right?
something,
Today.
yeah.
So the essence, you have to maintain, you can't put any additional water in that flow that's not already being done today.
Gotcha.
So you have to be at least consistent or better. So a lot of times though in the city you have underwater storm drainage. It's very, very expensive. I mean, you can have 36-inch, like I think in Hadley Farms toward the bottom, I think we even have up to like 48-inch pipes.
Okay.
At the very the end, it's carrying most of the water. So you'll have to build all that flow in, and then everything else that sheet flows on top of the ground, on top of the curbs, it'll go in, hit your curbs, go underground, and then it'll get released into either into the sewer or whatever storm drainage runoff capability there is.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. Let's say that you're building. Let's say there's not a sewer system.
Yeah.
And let's say that it slopes from front to back downhill, and you got 50% of your water that runs off, one back corner and 50% off the other back corner. When you build, they want to see that same thing happen after all the homes are there?
Typically, you really want all your water to go from the rear of your lot to the front of the lot off into the street.
Okay.
But sometimes
I'm talking about neighborhood, like the whole. Let's just say you got a rectangle neighborhood that you're putting in.
You'll typically go in the same direction, or you'll reroute it through the streets. And a lot of times you just build up. Like you will have to build up the backyards and then slope them. I mean, that's the best way. But sometimes you have terrain that's not economical, can't be done. And so we've had neighborhoods to where you have drainage channels in the rears of the houses. But again, everything's slowed down, and then eventually it goes in and feeds into your storm drainage.
Gotcha. Okay. And so when you guys look at a piece of land, obviously you have to get the study done, and then I guess first you get like somebody to draw up plans where all the lots would go, and then somebody can do the water study. Then, right?
Right. It's usually the same engineering firm will do most of that. They'll subcontract out if they don't have experts or whatever. But what we always try to do is we try to come in with a concept first. Like before I even sit down with an engineer, it's like, hey, what are we trying to do here? What is the flow? And sometimes, I'll actually go out to the piece of land and just walk it. And I'll spend hours and hours out there and just think, okay, how do we want this to work?
Yeah.
And we'll try to have concepts, and that way I think if you take concepts to the engineer, it just starts at a good place, and they have a vision of what you want to do, and they're very smart, and you sort of work together and you collaborate, and they're like, okay, well, that's a good idea, but hey, if you did this, this, and this, it would really be a good, it would even be better. So you kind of go back and forth. And we usually have, 3 or 4 iterations. We even take it to the city early on. Hey, what do you think of this preliminary concept? Okay, well, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Hey, you need to redo some of these things over here. And they'll redline it and give you feedback. And you collaborate with the cities. And, they want nice neighborhoods too. Mm-hmm. And I think the more that you collaborate with the cities and, with your engineers, then you have a much better product.
I like that. Okay, and now your third business, the rental properties. Mm-hmm. How do you look at rental properties? Like, what do you see as the value there? How do you value rental properties in your mind?
Yeah, I think the rental business is a really good business, because if you look historically, even in tough times in building, you're going to see sort of an inverse relationship, right? Because if the interest rates are really, really high, and the housing slows down, people aren't buying, they still have to have a place to live, right?
Right.
And you see, as these prices, if the prices are really rising in interest rates, on the housing side, and you have less people coming, then what will happen is less houses are being sold, so all of a sudden the rents go up, right? So we had this concept of, okay, listen, we want to protect our business to where, we're building houses, we're doing land development, but on this other side, we had a continuous revenue stream coming in, and even during the tough times of building, you always had this revenue stream to offset that, and again, that inverse relationship. So like in '08, and even like last year when things really slowed down, man, rents they went crazy,
Skyrocketed,
right?
yeah.
Skyrocketed,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of part of the thinking. The second thing about rental properties is you can leverage bank money, right? So you go in and you borrow the money. You build the rental house, and let's just say, for example, the rental house is $300,000.
Okay.
Right, and let's say maybe we have $50,000 of our capital sunk in, because we usually always buy the lot and things, when we're developing it. So let's say we have the lot paid for. We would do a rental property on there, and let's say again we have $300,000 all in it. Maybe I have $50,000 at risk, but what happens is I go out and I rent this house, and somebody's paying the mortgage to the bank, or paying us the rent. We're paying the mortgage to the bank. So what happens is, usually, you don't make a tremendous amount of money on a month-to-month basis. Maybe you're $100 to $300 of net positive cash flow, right? That's it, right? And a lot of times you take that, you set it aside for maintenance. But what happens is, let's say you rent that house, and let's say you have a 20-year loan against it. Well, in 20 years, you just created a minimum of $300,000 of wealth off a $50,000 initial investment, and you let somebody else carry the freight. Well, if you multiply that times 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 houses, all of a sudden you create that wealth generation off of letting somebody else pay for.
Plus appreciation, right?
And exactly. And by the time in 20 years, the house, it may be 3 times as, or at least, probably 3 times of what the original cost would be.
Yeah. And so that's crazy. Okay. So you basically, you built you did it. This was strategic to basically protect the company. So
absolutely,
when you develop land, you typically, if you just have a land developer, they develop the land, they sell the lots, that's how they make their money. So now you're basically in these lots at cost.
Right.
And then that way, if there is a downturn, I know we've talked about this before, you're able to still sell your houses and either not take a loss, or hopefully make at least profit off the lots, that kind of thing. And then also, if that slows down, hopefully you've got the supplemental rental income. If not, you can offload a couple properties or something like that to keep. Very smart. Okay, you're playing chess over here. Very cool. All right, so looking forward. We were talking about this a little bit. Where do you see the industry going? We were talking a little bit about the farmhouse style, that kind of, feel like that's on the out. And what do you see, I guess, coming up for houses and builders?
It's let me even preface my answer. First of all, I'm a technology guy. Okay. I was a software developer. I love technology. I love AI. And I believe that in maybe 10 to 15 years, the industry is going to be so different, people won't even recognize it. I think with AI and technology and robotics and the ability to build different types of houses, I think you're going to see significant fundamental change, way more than I think what most people realize.
Okay.
I mean, even a couple of examples, you see all the 3D printing of houses, and I think that's happening a lot in California. In Austin, they're doing some. The other big thing is modularization of homes. You're building these with sophisticated with robotics, almost like a Tesla's built in a factory, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see more and more to where, you basically go out and houses are constructed off-site. They come on and then they sort of put it all together on site. And there's going to be so much additional new technology that's going to be coming out. I think there's going to be some major disruption in the industry within the next decade. Is what I think. So just overall, I think it's going to be significantly different. I do think that, there's going to be more scale in houses. So I actually think prices are going to stabilize. And I think with the technology and with the scale of technology, I even think you maybe even see some house prices decrease over time, just because they can scale, right? I mean, you build that stuff in a factory and you do it with robotic, cheap labor and things like that. I think you're going to see more and more of that. Again, that's not in the next 5 years, 10 years. I'm thinking that's, 15 to 20 years, it's going to be completely different. And I think you're going to see smaller footprints. I think, with some of the, younger people coming up, they want to be more mobile. They like to travel a lot more. So I think you're going to see smaller footprints, and it allows more mobility across the industry.
I like that. What do you think about I've got some different ideas as well, but what do you think about convertible spaces? For instance, a dining room.
Right.
How often do people use a dining room?
Right.
Maybe 10 days out of the year, maybe. But something where you can convert that into a different usable space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen anything on that?
I have seen things like that. As a matter of fact, when I was at I think it was the home building show in Vegas about 4 years ago. I think it was, I want to say Georgia Tech. I could get that wrong, but the students, they built this modular home, and it was so cool, and it's a plug and play, and it's exactly the concept. You had this structure, and you had the ability to move it all around and change things. And hey, if you're having a bunch of company over, then you had a huge living room, and you took this wall down, it slid over. And then all of a sudden the people leave, and then you want more privacy. You take this wall, you slide it back. And even your kitchen, let's say it's 4 years later, you're tired of your kitchen, you want to change it out. You just basically plug in a new kitchen.
Dude,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I've always thought about it why can you not just change the colors of your cabinets? Why don't we have some kind of product where you don't have to repaint everything? And then appliances. It seems like appliances have looked the same since they came out in the 50s or 40s or whatever.
Right.
I mean, they've changed a little bit, but they still look like appliances. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of room for innovation.
I think you're right. Happened. And it's interesting because it is different. If you think of where cars have gone and what they're doing, like the Teslas, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen any videos on how they actually create the cars. It's mind-blowing, right? With the technology they have. There's a lot of technology out there. It's still hard to bring it out into a job site and make it work. That's why I think you're going to see more robotics off-site, and then they assemble, and it's more sort of compartmentalized and things on site. So I think you're going to see that, but I do think that the technology will get better and better and better, and I do think just in a matter of time you'll have robotics even out in the field working, and I think once they come out, I think it'll be a game changer. I think you're going to have new materials that are coming out, and to your point around cabinet colors and things like that. It's almost to a point where whatever mood you're in, you come in, you hit a button, and they're green today, and hey, they're orange tomorrow, and they're white the next day. I mean, I think you're going to get to that level, and I think it's going to happen in a hurry. I think within 15 years the industry is going to be so different, people won't even know.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Because I think right now, even so my background is computer engineering as well, and at the very beginning I thought about doing a tech company for houses, automating everything. I'm do you even really need light switches? But then I was thinking about it, and I was well, I've seen baby boomers try and use technology, and until I feel like my generation starts becoming the buyer on higher end stuff, that it's probably not going to be, there's not going to be a ton of tech put in to homes, at least not common.
Right. And I think that right now too is I want my custom home. I want it to be shaped this way. I want this color brick, this color stone and stuff. And it is hard to add technology to that, right? Because everything's different. Mm-hmm. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see less difference, and you're going to see houses it's, I don't want to use Levittown as an example, but they're going to look similar, right? They're going to have similar sizes, similar footprints.
What is Levittown?
Levittown is, I think it was in, I don't know, New Jersey or New York, whatever. And the developer went in, and every single house is like the exact same throughout the entire neighborhood. So just, everything's exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, it's more of, like right now, a lot of people, they want that custom feel, and they want it to be their house. But I think as people let go of that, and they're more willing to have the same footprint as their neighbor and their neighbor that's 4 houses down, I think you're going to start to see that. But again, I think it's going to take time. I mean, it's not going to be any time in the next few years, but technology is going to get us to a place that it just becomes extremely more affordable, more efficient, better technology, a better standard of living, and way cheaper, and then allows people to be way more mobile.
Yeah. Have you given any thought to like community living? Like, cause I mean, this is something I've been thinking about quite a bit. It's like, I would love to have family closer, or friends, I've got a 7-month-old, as you know, and I've got a lot of friends that, I love being around. They've got kids about the same age, and I would love to be close to them. And, I've looked into, like, what if there was some kind of community living situation where you've got like one communal kitchen, and, everybody works nowadays. So it's like, hey, maybe each couple picks a different day of the week to go cook for everybody. 'Cause I know it's tough. My wife is a vegetarian. And so it's like, a lot of times, even if we buy a pound of beef and I cook something, it's like, man, I have leftovers for like 3 days, and it's hard to eat everything, So do you have any thoughts on that? And if you do, is it feasible economically?
First of all, they're doing that a lot in college towns right now. I mean, you sort of have these community, kitchens and
sense.
Community spaces,
Yeah.
And then you have people that rent rooms. And I know you're not, talking exactly like that, but I do think I do see that. I see that. I don't know necessarily, communal kitchens and things, but I do believe that, like-minded people and people that you enjoy being around, I think there will be more people that are moving in groups of like, hey, here's my 10 best friends, and we want to live in this kind of community with these sort of amenities and things. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Instead of an individual or a family moving, you're going to see groups of people moving.
Yeah.
But again, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. But then I was getting into the weeds of it. And I was like, man, what happens when somebody leaves? Like, is it like there's a vote among everybody else if the new person is cool enough to move to the neighborhood, or like?
But I think you're going to see the neighborhoods though that you'll see people move more in groups, just because again you enjoy being around people and things. And I think if the prices are affordable and the right type of home, because like, if you had the ability to be around your friends and have the amenities and things that you want, you would probably you could be okay with a certain footprint. It may not be your dream home, but man, you would sacrifice that for all the other things, right?
Oh, for sure.
So, but I think the AI technology and robotics, it's changing so many industries so fast, and the speed at which it's changing now, it's unprecedented, right? So, it's coming. It's going to come to this industry quickly.
I like it. All right. So what currently, you're 9 years in, you've got a company, it seems to be running pretty smoothly. What's your biggest hurdle at the moment?
Biggest hurdle? I think the biggest hurdle is, how fast do we grow next? Like, do we want to go from 100 houses a year to 150? Do we want to go to 250? Where do we, how big do we want to be? I think is kind of fundamental, because obviously you have to have the employees that can support that growth, because growing can be painful, because you don't want to lose the quality. You want to maintain sort of who you are, your identity, and things like that. So I think the biggest hurdle is just trying, in your own strategy, is where do you really want to be, and how you can and get a plan to get there. I think the second thing is, where are you going to build, and where are you going to grow, and what does the locations look like? And the big challenge too today is it's easy to have a plan of, I want to build 250 houses next year, right? Well, that sounds great, But do you have 250 lots to build 250 homes on, right? So there's the whole land development that you have to sort of feed the engine. So everything's multi-year planning. So you know, how many lots do we think we're going to need next year, the year after that, the year after that? Because we're buying land right now that we're going to develop in 3 years or
Right.
2 years or 5 years, right? So I think the hurdles are just, you know, having an engine that can go in, develop, supply the chain of with lots. And then on top of that, once you sort of figure out how many you want to build and locations, and then just having the right number of people and the right expertise to execute
And
on
that's
it.
got to take a lot of capital, right?
Very, very. It's such a capital intensive business. It really is.
Is that something that you guys utilize banks for, or do you have investors as far as like buying land?
We put a lot of capital into the business from the beginning, but no, we definitely, you know, as most builders, even your biggest builders, they're leveraging banks and lending institutions. We have you know, several banks that we work with, that we have lines of credit. We have taken on outside investment, but very little. We've done that very strategically because we wanted to grow organically, and we wanted to grow at our pace. My business partner and I were very conservative. We try not to get over our skis. We never get overextended. So we could probably grow much faster, but we are growing fast enough, and it's at a comfortable pace for us.
Gotcha. Very cool. For somebody that's out there that's maybe like a young entrepreneur trying to figure things out, what advice, what's the number one thing? What is the advice you would give to them?
Man, single best advice I can give you if you want to be an entrepreneur, just be prepared to work really, really, really hard. Right? You have to have the determination to where you go in and you just don't accept failure. You're going to have to grind. And I always tell my guys, and tell my son this all the time, if it were easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. It's hard. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've worked 7 days in a row for 3 months in a row without a day off, and working 14, 15-hour days. Everybody says they want to start a business, and everybody says they want to do this, but when you actually get into it and you see how much hard work it is, people don't want it anymore. So I think if you're going to go into it, you need to make sure it's something that you have a passion for, because if you don't love it and you're not going to enjoy doing it every day, you're not going to have the willpower and the determination to go the course, because the first year to 2 years is hardest as well. I mean, that's when you're not making a whole lot of money. You're trying to buy a lot. You're getting houses. You got a 6 to 9 month cycle. So it would be very, very challenging. But yeah, I think the best advice I would give anybody is, you know, you better love whatever you go into, and you got to be willing to work really, really hard.
Okay, that's good. Okay, last question. How do you prevent burnout when you're working 7 days a week for a month or 2 or 3? I know that's something a lot of people deal with. Did it happen to you?
Throughout my entire career, I was in the professional environment for about 27 years, and I had big jobs and very stressful. And there are times that, I think everybody would be lying. I mean, I think I'm a big Elon Musk fan. I think he's done so much, with technology and just humanity and things like that.
He's pushing things so hard,
and he works so hard. But even everybody gets burned out, right? I think there's a couple of things. I think the way you avoid burnout, I think first of all, if you truly have a passion for it, at least you're still doing something you love. And I think there are times where you have to unplug, right? I think you have to, okay, I'm going to take a week off and I'm going to go on a vacation. I'm going to clear my head. But I think what you have to get in tune with your body and how you are, because we all know ourselves. And what I try to do is, before I get to the burnout stage, I kind of know, like, man, I'm burning the candle. I need rest. And then I'll plan something to where I'll take a 3-day weekend, or my wife and I'll go off to Cabo for, a week or something like that. Because, it's important, because at some point you got to come in and be productive every day. You have to be thinking well. You have to think critically, strategically. And if you're tired and you're burned out, you start to lose the edge, and that edge can make a big difference. So that's kind of how I would do it. I do travel. Even today I travel a lot. I've always loved traveling. So that's the other thing. It's like, once a quarter I'll take some time off and I'll go. But then the other time when I'm back in, I'm grinding hard.
Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about Martin Creek Ranch.
Martin Creek Ranch.
Yeah, what is your vision behind that?
You know, first of all, it's a very unique property, and I know that you know that. Just to even kind of start with the concept of it, it's about 500 acres. We only have 26 lots, right? So the lots are anywhere between 10 acres. We do have a couple of larger ones, are like 75 acres, but they're sold. So it's about a 500 acre subdivision. We only had 26 total lots. It also backs up to another 700 acres. That's a ranch. And it all goes down to the Brazos River, and that will never be developed.
Okay.
So if you think about it, you have 1,200 acres, and you're going to have 26 homes in there. So it's a very unique, community. And then on top of that, if I had to take a step back and talk about Martin Creek, it's, I think, some of the most beautiful land in DFW. And that's what really got me excited when I went out. And I remember looking at these views that are, 60, 70 miles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely gorgeous. So, that's what first attracted me. There's hills. It almost reminds me of like a Colorado or Wyoming vibe or Montana vibe. And so you go out there, there's all these beautiful trees. We have a 10-acre common area that's got like a 4-acre lake in it full of big bass. And I'm like, man, can we take something that's this beautiful and be 45 minutes away from downtown Fort Worth, create a really unique community, and still not lose the natural beauty? And so, when we took a step back, the vision was to have something, again, there's only 26 people that are going to be in there, or 26 homes. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to build a little bit higher end community, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, you start with 10-acre lots minimum. And so you think of them as ranchettes, but we wanted that whole Colorado, Montana kind of vibe. So, we started with that. First of all, if you look at the entrance, it's a really unique entrance.
Cool.
It's lit up at night. There's only 2 entrances into the community. And then we also went with concrete streets. We even have fiber out in the neighborhood.
You do?
We do have fiber.
Wow, that is such a big deal for a lot of people.
It is. So, again, I guess the vision was we wanted to create a unique place to where it's this real secluded, small, quaint environment to where we have really good people that move in there. And these are hopefully estates that last generations.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the feel and the thinking. But there's just so much natural beauty. And that's why we just wanted to leave it all there.
Yeah.
And just accent the beauty.
Yeah. As like we're looking at this video, I mean, like it looks beautiful out there, but I can't, even with the drone footage, whatever, it's not the same as being there. It is a very, very beautiful place out there. So what, as far as the homes go, like you mentioned, are you building a spec or 2 out there?
Yes.
Okay.
We're actually about to start a couple of homes out there. One is a custom job, and we'll probably start another custom job within the next 3 to 4 months out there too. But no, we're going to go ahead and start, because I think right now when people go out, they see the beauty of the property and, again, the views, but there's not a lot of houses out there, right? And so I think what we need to do is just show people what's going to be built out there. We do have a 4,500 square foot minimum on homes, but that includes under roof, because, what we find is, some people, they may only want 2,500 to 2,800 square feet, but they want a 2,000 square foot porch that's unbelievable because they spend all their time outside, right? With these views. So it's, that's kind of part of the requirement. But, we do want it to be, a higher end community. We're just looking for, good people that want to come out and have a beautiful estate that then can last generations.
Love that. And who do you imagine is going to be the buyer on this?
I think the people that are going to be buyers that somebody that doesn't want to be on top of their neighbor. They want some land. They want to be able to spread out. You can't have horses and cows and things like that.
Okay. So
out there.
There's a lot of different topography, right? There's some lots that are pretty wide open. So if you wanted to have horses out there, those would be good lots. And there's some that are very wooded if you want to have that extra privacy, I guess.
Absolutely. And you're still 45 minutes away from downtown Fort Worth. And that's the key. You when you drive into the subdivision, first of all, you don't feel like you're in DFW.
No, it's
I mean, you feel like you're.
It feels like Colorado.
It feels like Colorado, right? So then then you go in and you can actually get affordable land. I mean, land's expensive, but you can get a 10 acre tract, and we're starting at like 329 and going up from there depending on the actual lot and the topography of the lot and location, the views and things like that. But I think that the people that will end up buying out there, living out there, are professionals that maybe they work in downtown Fort Worth, but they want to be able to get away, literally get away from the city, but yet be able to commute back and forth and just have a beautiful place that they can go out and take their kids fishing or their grandchildren fishing, and enjoy nice. Again, usually when you go out into the county like this and you have a subdivision with 10 acre lots, you're not going to get concrete streets. You're not going to get fiber. So we try to take those.
Usually you're going to get dirt road and some mobile homes.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it was when I first went out there, a friend of mine told me about it, and I drove it for the first time. There was something mesmerizing about it, and I always tell people you can't even appreciate it through pictures and things. You have to just go out and you have to see it. But yeah, we're excited about it. I bought a 75 acre lot. I'm going to be in the community myself. I'm certainly obviously committed to it, and the other developer that I'm partnering with on this, he lives out there, and he and I own the 700 acres to the south too, so that would never be developed.
Gotcha. Where did the name come from?
The name came from actually my business partner's last name is Martin.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of did it to honor his family.
That's awesome. Very cool. And then you had mentioned previously of building like a gathering area. Is that going to be like a pavilion? Do you have plans for that yet?
Yeah. Actually, we'll probably do it. We'll probably build it in the spring. Yeah, it's going to be a really nice pavilion area, and it's just a place for the entire community to come down, have a nice shaded area where we can have picnics and things like that. Like I said, we have about a 4 acre lake, and it's full of bass. And we'll probably end up doing a nice pier that goes out into the water, again, so the kids can go fishing. And there's even been talk about maybe doing a pickleball court or something fun like that too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, 10 acres, you can do a lot. And
Yeah.
I think once people start moving in, and we get together, and I think it's going to be a community where hopefully people have a lot of fun together. We spend time together.
And you actually know everybody.
You know everybody. And then on top of that, if somebody's like, oh, I'd really like a basketball court, well, hey, let's talk about it, and let's go in and put a basketball court in.
Love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I guess if people want more information, we'll link to the website. And anything else?
No, I mean, again, I think with Martin Creek, it's one of those communities that if you are looking for more of an estate, and I think these are going to be ones that are passed down, from generation to generation, because I think if you go out there and you see this property and you see 10 acre lots, they're going away. It's hard to find 10 acre lots, especially that close to, downtown Fort Worth and some of the areas. So, please go take a look at it, because I think that, all the pictures and videos, although they're really good and Tom does a great job, they don't do any justice. You got to go out there and see the million colors that come in on a sunset or a sunrise.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I do have one other thing
Sure.
for you. So you guys have put in a high game fence. That's for the 700 acres behind the property, right?
Yes.
If somebody wants to hunt back there, do they have to become your best friend?
Yeah, they got to become friends, really good friends. Yes.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
That's it.
All right. Well,
the only requirement.
Yeah. Well, you guys will be neighbors.
That's right. We're going to be neighbors.
So there we go.
Come
all
on.
right. Well, thanks for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.